Hello everyone and welcome to CalSAR. Today is going to be our third episode on President Grant, and this time we're going to be focusing on the Civil War, and specifically we're going to be focusing on key battles during that time as I define it. So you might disagree on the key battles, but these are the battles that I chose. So once again, this is President Grant, yay! So we're going to start off with Fort Donelson. So the dates of this battle, were February 11th, 1862 to February 16th, 1862. On the Union side, we had Grant and Foote, and on the Confederate side, we had Buckner, Pillow, and Floyd. The casualty count for the Confederates is really high, but that's also including captured. So let's just go over the total dead. So the Union had 507 soldiers killed, and the Confederacy had 327 soldiers killed. Despite the fact the Union lost more soldiers, the Union actually did win this battle, and this is kind of like that one of those first battles that just kind of set Grant up for success. So he moves on, and then Shiloh comes. Dun, 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 dun. This one happened on April 6th to April 7th, 1862. On the Union side, we had Grant and then Buell. On the Confederacy, we had Johnston and Beauregard. And the casualties for this were pretty even. On the Union side, we had 1,754 killed. That's not injured, that's not captured, that's killed. And on the Confederate side, we had 1,728 killed. It resulted in a Union victory. On April 6th, the Confederacy attacked. They caught the Union off guard. Buell arrived on the 7th with reinforcements, and then the second day belonged to the Union. And it is reported that essentially Grant said it doesn't matter if you lose on the first day, but you got to win on the second day because that's when you actually win the battle. The Confederacy had the biggest loss when General Johnston died, and that's a huge loss for them. They actually lost a couple really key generals that really hurt them, such as Stonewall Jackson. So they lost two really big generals during this war. And I don't know if that would have changed it. I don't think so. But those were two big losses. So then we go to Vicksburg, May 18th to July 4th, 1863. So on the Union side, we had Grant and Sherman. Yes, that is the Sherman in the March to the Sea. And on the Confederate side, we had Pemberton. On the Union side, we had 1,581 Union soldiers killed. On the Confederate side, we had 1,413 killed. Once again, even though the Union had more casualties, the end result was a Union victory. And as we all know, when you're on the offensive, you're probably going to lose more soldiers most of the time, and that's the case here. But once again, Grant with Sherman, they just pushed forward with great resilience and the ability to just hold their ground, and ended up overcoming Pemberton in Vicksburg. So then now we move on to Chattanooga, and if you've seen another video, you've seen at least a little part of this video where they were talking to one of the generals about I see the field, and if you haven't seen it, it's the previous video. But this battle started on September 21st and went all the way to November 25th, 1863. Now, if you've ever been to that area, you know that battlefield is huge. It is massive. On the Union side, we have Grant, Rosecrans, Thomas, Sherman, and Hooker. On the Confederate side, we have Bragg. And so the casualties on here for the Confederates were anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000. And on the Union side, we had 5,824. And not bad that the Union actually had fewer casualties and actually won the battle. So good for them. But that is a big battlefield. And there were times there, if you go to that one part, it looks like the Confederacy is going to win that battle, but they did not. So now we're going to move on to Cold Harbor. Now, I read somewhere that this is one of Grant's biggest regrets. Started on May 31st and went to June 12th, 1864. On the Union side, we had Grant and Meade. And on the Confederate side, we have Lee, and Breckinridge. So, like I said before, Union, Grant, and Meade, Confederates, Lee, and Breckinridge. On the Union side, we had 1,845 Union soldiers killed. It was not even close in terms of casualties. The Confederacy only had 788 killed. The General Lee and his soldiers, they knew that area like the back of my hand. And General Grant is known for his resilience, and here it probably amounts to more like stubbornness, because sometimes that's what it looks like. And for the Union, it was a huge, even though the battle is listed as inconclusive, it was a huge loss, and that the Union soldiers it kind of brought up that idea that Grant is a butcher. And true or not, that's up for you to decide. But this battle right here, losing twice as many soldiers and not winning the battle, it did not look good for Grant. But he would recover. And he recovers, and by the end here, by March 29th, we have Appomattox. So it lasted from March 29th to April 9th, 1865. On the Union side, we have Grant, Harris, Meade, Ord, and Sheridan, just short. And on the Confederate side, we have Lee. So on the Union side, we have 10,780 casualties. And on the Confederate side, we don't really know, because this is where Robert E. Lee, he surrendered. He said, hey, these terms are really generous. And he disbanded his military. And that was the end of the Confederacy right there. Robert E. Lee was the de facto leader of the Confederacy. And once he put down his arms, the war was essentially over, and the Confederacy basically lost. So that's it for the battles. And let's talk about one of the biggest differences here. So Grant knew the Confederacy had limited resources, and he decided that he was going to exploit this by sending several armies in several different directions and having one army constantly stay on Lee. Lee was the strongest military unit they had. Lee was the greatest general they had, and probably the strongest army they had. And at that time, he had this kind of mystique about him, but he was invincible. And so Grant wisely had an army constantly on Lee, constantly just keep that pressure on him. And then send other armies like Sherman in his march to and just overwhelm the Confederacy. Just use the North's ability to pull more out of itself and overwhelm the Confederacy. And his strategy worked. At the end of the day, if it wasn't for Grant, who knows how long it would have taken for the Union to win the war. Because he had the right strategy, the right frame of mind, the right amount of resilience or stubbornness, however you want to look at it. And that's it for this episode. So I want to thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and the next one will be Grant's presidency. So have a wonderful day.